Civiltà dell'amore, fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
Good evening. Welcome to this first meeting of the Spirto Gentil series here at the Rimini meeting. Spirto Gentil has attempted to give its contribution to the deepening of the precious titles of the Rimini meeting. This year we've tried to do the same, and so we identified out of the 50 CDs published in the Spirto Gentil collection, the ones that could best help us exploit this wonderful title, which is Human Existence is an Inexhaustible Friendship. So we chose two appointments. One is today, and the second one is on next Wednesday, sorry. And these are basically situations in which Don Giussani faces the topic of friendship. It's not easy within the realm of classical music to do this. And there are two artists that have basically contributed towards creating this important aspect. One is a personal experience of friendship of Don Giussani, and the second one is a more universal thing. So the focus is on the foundation of friendship and sometimes even the drama, the tragedy of friendship. Today I would like to start with what he said of two sonate by Beethoven. The first one is connected to an episode of Don Giussani's life in which he was touched by a personal friendship, the friendship of a priest that would support him when he came back home after his work in Milan. And the second sonata that we will listen to refers to an example of friendship within the framework of Beethoven's experience. And like Beethoven and Don Giussani did, I would like to invite you to, in a way, not to focus on details, to the peculiar details, and to see basically something more general. And it would be interesting to do this through the help of some of the masterpieces of both some poets and Don Giussani's intuition and the poets we're going to listen to. And to do this, I would like to start with an introduction that Father Giussani wanted to live in the cities devoted to the sonata by Beethoven. The fifth sonata was composed by Beethoven when he was very young, and it's linked to a very peculiar aspect.
Suono alla voce.
To do this, I would like also to leave some room to spoken words. And so I invited a major friend of mine, Franco Palmieri, whom I would like to welcome on stage He is an actor and director. He was part of Teatro dell'Arca. He collaborated with Giovanni De Stori for a number of years, and he is the founder of Essilor. Since 2002, he's been following international theatrical projects. He directed playwrights in a number of international cities, and he's carrying out educational projects in Israel, Armenia, United States, and in many Italian cities. And he's the art director of Cento Cante in Siena. Thank you very much for being with us this evening. He will help us with poems, with the poems written by poets and the poems by Don Giussani, so the poetry of Don Giussani. Thank you very much, Franco. Some Sundays I would come down to Milan from Venegono 2 or 3 times. So at that time, I would do this enormous effort on Sundays. And in the evening, I would arrive home very tired. Monsignor Gaetano Corti, every Sunday for a whole year, would wait for me at the piano. Listen to this. It was Beethoven's 5th sonata. This sonata is in C minor, and it is very melancholic and well suited to the tiredness. He had chosen it on purpose. The tiredness by which I was always seized every Sunday evening. As a matter of fact, it expresses the nature of the state of mind with which I used to return home. The yearning, because the response to the desire of one's heart, which is Christ, does not find acceptance in man, because the desire itself is not truly pursued by man. Monsignor Corti, with great discretion and almost identifying himself with that music, thus offered the comfort of his sharing, full of reason, to the burden of my day. But try to think how I used to return after the 3rd or 4th time, how I used to return to my room, what thoughts I had, what kind of stimulus I had towards this behavior of a friend. So this was an episode. A priest welcoming him by playing always this sonata. And actually he said this was the behavior of a friend, and I never forgot this behavior after 50 or 60 years. Monsignor Corti was a friend because he reminded him of the most important and central part of his existence, and this particularly struck me. So the answer to the desire of one's heart, which is Christ, doesn't find, is not welcomed in man. So the sonata you will listen to reminded Father Giussani friendship. Through the sonata, he basically felt that his passion for the truth of the world was very well described. So I'm really curious, precisely like you, what he was listening to and why this sonata had him feel precisely these emotions and these feelings. We asked a friend of mine and a colleague who's connected from New York. He's been collaborating for many years and has contributed to its making this particularly precious. Hi, Chris. We asked him to help us understand what was that Don Giussani was particularly struck by in the sonata. And I have a couple of information for Chris, about Chris. Chris was born in New Orleans. He studied piano at the University of North Texas and the Juilliard School in New York. He did concerts for piano at the Carnegie Hall and in Castel Gandolfo for Pope Benedict. And he wrote and directed concerts for the theater, music for film, and music for theater. And at the moment, he lives and works in Brooklyn. First of all, thank you very, very much. I would like to kindly ask you to help us in this. So, good evening, everyone. When I was 14, I learned this sonata by Beethoven that we will now listen to. I was 14 years old when I first learned it. Beethoven was 26 when he wrote it. This was one of his first sonatas and the 5th out of 32. At the beginning, in the opening, you immediately feel the unease, the unrest of this young 26-year-old composer. The opening theme is stormy and dramatic. It was written by a young man who is discovering himself and who is discovering his profession. He's discovering how he can communicate through music. So maybe music is not autobiographical. Maybe Beethoven was simply describing an adolescent who was in difficulty, so a person who was even younger than the composer himself. Maybe he was talking about a 14-year-old like me when I first played the sonata the first time. When I was 14 years old, I was more concerned because of the learning and the playing of the notes of this piece instead than of the emotional content of the sonata. Back then, I did not realize that music was entirely and deeply connected with my humanity, and that it could help me describe and live life. And then, when I was 25 or 30 years old, I did understand. I felt the drama of these topics. I basically perceived the tortured soul of Beethoven. But now that I'm 66, I'm really struck by the fact that the sonata sounds really candid to me, as if it were that of a teenager. So you perceive the drama of an adolescent, and the sections are very short. So there is a turbulent theme that is presented, but it's soon left. And soon the composer moves on to another softer and quieter topic. Beethoven's compositional style was not so complex when he was 26. But music, in this case, expressed innocence. So, who am I as a person? Basically determines what the music tells me. So I was actually wondering if Don Giussani, as an old person, perceived this music in a different way compared to when he was younger. So the played form is a drama in themes in the first and third movement of this sonata. The first themes are stormy. The second ones are the opposite. They are playful. They're sweet. So you have this battle between opposing themes, and that's a distinctive feature of the dramatic form, of the dramatic style of Beethoven. So you will probably listen to this difference in the characters between themes. So this slow movement of the first sonatas by Beethoven often appear to me to be the deepest. This is probably not so striking, not so visible now, but certainly it is very visible. When I talked about the rapid movements, and I said that the sections are very rapid, actually this does not apply here. Music here is very slow, takes place very slowly. And then the result is that we have more time to think about what is taking place, to think about what life is. Just observe if the slow movement strikes you, precisely like that. And then there's a last aspect I'd like to underline, which is the fact that one of Beethoven's innovations, one of his compositions, is the way in which he uses music to explain his life experiences. So this first sonata that he composed when he was 26 lasts only 13 minutes. His life experience is rather limited. The passionate sonata that he composed when he was 35 lasts 22 minutes. The other one, the clavier sonata that he wrote when he was 48, lasts longer, 45 minutes. At 48 years of age, Beethoven has a lot more to say than when he was 26. So to conclude, I suggest that you listen to Sonata number 5 and with an open attitude, willing to receive and to listen to what he's telling you. What is Beethoven using to describe life? What is he describing? What is he using to describe people? How are you provoked? How are you touched? And I hope that you enjoy the listening. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you very much. And now I think we can start this pathway to try and understand what friendship is. We have with us, we have a maestro who is a dear friend of the Rimini meeting, Maestro Giulio Giurato. I'd like to have a big applause for Maestro Giurato. He got his diploma in piano in Bologna, then started a varied activity of concerts as a solo player and a member of groups, the pupil of Giorgio Demos, and he also played with Demos. He's a professor of chamber music and coordinator of the ensemble music at the Conservatory Arrigo Boito in Parma. Maestro, you have the floor.
siamo solo a metà.
So let's move to the second sonata. So as I was saying, the first sonata is mainly linked to the experience actually lived by Don Giussani during his young age. And as I was saying, all facts in his life, also small fact, was linked to the universal context. And the same is for Beethoven with this wonderful sonata, very well-known sonata, which is called Les Adieux with a French title. And is linked to an episode in the life of Beethoven, very sad, dramatic, and at the end, very, very happy. And this is precisely the description of a friendship relationship. So again, a fact that happened in 1809 to Beethoven, where he used to work. There was suddenly an alarm raising, so they all had to run away because Napoleon was arriving with his troops with a very complex relationship with Beethoven, of course, very dramatic. So they had to leave, suddenly leave. And Beethoven decides to describe this Archduke episode, and he writes the goodbye. Then 4th of May, 1809. For His Highness, the Archduke Rudolph. It seems to be very formal, but it's not the case. These three movements actually represent the goodbye, the farewell, the first one, and then the second one concerns the fact of missing someone, and it's very, very dramatic. We'll listen to that. So the absence. And then the last one, the return. I linked these three movements. The first one, which is written as Chris was saying, and as we were saying, things and shapes evolve during the time, over the time, and Beethoven starts linking these movements as he used to do in the 9th sonata, and he goes from one movement to the other without stopping. The second and the third one are linked, one to the other, and they have a very strong power. So I wanted to try to connect this movement to poems of an Italian poet who is not contemporary of Beethoven. He's Clemente Rebora. Maybe you heard some of his poems. He's very well known, a very good Italian poet. And in my opinion, these poems may help us understanding better the moment of the absence and the moment which they run away, but also the moment of the return. The first poem I would like to share with you, and then I will leave the floor to the artists. The first one is a poem that describes the waiting of each person, of each human being in his gestures, in what he does. So whatever you do is not justified for something. It's because you want something else. And Rebora says that when things are getting closer, each person grasps, actually, as Dante used to say. Rebora says each one grasps and takes his good, screaming, saying goodbye. So as I was saying, every episode in the hands of an artist becomes eternal and universal. So you see the moment in which Beethoven realizes he is leaving something that he likes and which tells him goodbye. So if you think to the things or also to the person that you love, and you are aware of the fact that sooner or later this will happen, and let's listen how this first movement starts. Giulio.
E poi si accorgerà.
And then he realizes that he has to leave. So you will see, we will listen this first movement. I don't want to go deeper into details, but you will always hear these two melodies going far away with these farewells, these gestures of going away. And the second and the third movements can be linked to another wonderful poem written by Rebora, which is called From the Tense Image. And in this case, he describes a moment which is very difficult to be located in a specific context, because everything seems to have no shape. And in that moment, the absence for Rebora is like having no shape. And let me just quote, I'm keeping watch on the instant. How can you do that? Let's try to imagine that. How can you watch at something? How can you watch an instant? It means that this waiting is so tense that you can even see, you can even watch the instant without waiting for anybody. And then it says, in the lit shade, I'm spying upon the bell. So let's think about that. Well, it talks about a lit shade, but a shade cannot be lit. But the moment is so tense, so weighted, that the shade is lit up, and he is even spying upon the bell. So there is this bell announcing something else, and he's not waiting for anybody. And this is a very unique poem which helps us to follow these two movements. So let's listen to how Beethoven describes the absence. There is a kind of a clock on the background. So listen to the rhythm. There is this clock hitting and showing how there is this absence. So the topic here is that there is something missing.
Come un metronomo, capite?
So you hear this rhythm and you listen to this melody. There's nothing. And it goes ahead this way, and there is such tension, but I'm not waiting for anybody. And at the middle of this poem, there is the turning point, which is between the second and the third movement. And there is a moment where he says, but it will come. I'm not waiting for anybody, but it shall come. And he explains why he was not waiting for anybody, because what he was waiting for cannot be compared with anybody, but it shall come. And it starts saying, it will come, it will come. And you will listen to the third movement, which is the party of friendship, which is the highest moment of friendship, where everything becomes joyful and very happy. And Rebora tells us who will come. And he says, he will come almost pardon of what he makes die. He will come to make me certain of his and my treasure. He will come as a relief of mine and his pains. I think that this sonata and this poem represent the most dramatic representation of what means having a friend, losing him, but then finding him again for the eternity. Enjoy this listening.
Qualunque cosa tu dica,
Whatever you say or do, there is a cry inside. It is not for this. It is not for this. And so everything refers to a secret demand. In the imminence of God, life makes short work of perishable reserves, while everyone grasps at one of his goods that shouts at him, goodbye.
Dall'immagine tesa vigilo.
From the tense image, I'm keeping watch on the instant with imminence of weight, and I'm not waiting for anybody. In the lit shade, I'm spying upon the bell, which imperceptible is spreading a pollen of sound. And I'm not waiting for anybody. Between four walls, astonished of space, more than a desert, I'm not waiting for anybody. But he must come. He will come. If I resist, to blossom, not sin. He will come all of a sudden, when I least realize. He will come almost pardon of what he makes die. He will come to make me certain of his and my treasure. He will come as a relief of my and his pains. His whisper will come. Perhaps it is already coming.
vorrei...
Let me conclude with the very last reading from Don Giussani, and the context where we take this very nice statement, which is the title of the meeting, where it says something amazing. Existence is a deep dialogue. Existence. So when I said from the little episode to the universal, so existence is a deep dialogue, meaning what happens every day, the everyday life is a deep dialogue, and the possibility to live this depth as a friendship is the most extraordinary aspect, or we may even say miraculous aspect of the experience that Don Giussani offered us during his existence, during his life. The strength of the man is another one. The existence is a deep dialogue. Loneliness has been cancelled at the roots themselves of every moment of life. Human existence is an inexhaustible friendship. And the community which is created in that way is like a single experience of a sweet approach for people that are lost. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Maestro Giurato. Thank you, Franco Palmieri, and thanks, Christopher Vath, who is still connected with us. And the next session will be on Wednesday with Stabat Matin. Goodbye to everybody. Thank you.
Civiltà dell'amore, fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
Thank you.